Today I will be talking to you about disease control, elimination, and eradication. So, in the beginning, you have to understand the definition of disease control, elimination, and eradication. And secondly, the steps in controlling the spread of the disease. So, when you are talking about the steps in the control of the spread of the disease, we are talking about controlling the reservoir or source of infection, the route of transmission, the susceptible, and controlling the protecting the susceptible host. So, what is the definition of disease control? Whenever we say control of a disease, it means that we are trying to reduce the disease incidence, prevalence, morbidity, or mortality to such to a locally acceptable level as a result of some deliberate efforts. That means we are making a conscious effort to reduce the incidence, prevalence, morbidity, or mortality of a disease. And also, we should understand when we want to control the disease, continued measures, the intervention measures are required to maintain the reduction. Suppose, taking the example of diarrheal disease, it is not enough to achieve the control of the disease at just one point of time, but continued measures are also required. So, when we want to control the disease, it is not just enough for the medical measures to have the medical measures, but also it requires community participation, political support, and cooperation from other sectors. So, this is the main aspect of disease control. So, now let us try to understand what is elimination of a disease. So, elimination of a disease is defined as reduction to zero of the incidence of a specified disease in a defined geographical area. Once again, like in control, continued intervention measures are required. So, very good example of elimination of disease is neonatal tetanus or leprosy. India achieved the leprosy elimination in 2016. So this is another example of leprosy wherein in 2002 we set a target of elimination of leprosy as a public health problem which is defined as less than one case per 10,000 population at the national level in December 2005. But according to the World Health Organization, elimination of neonatal tetanus, the definition given is the incidence of less than one case of neonatal tetanus in 1000 live births in every district or similar administrative unit across the nation in a year. So then what is eradication? Eradication is defined as a permanent reduction to zero of the worldwide incidence of infection caused by a specific agent as a result of deliberate efforts. Till to date, we have been able to eradicate only one disease, that is smallpox, which was declared eradicated in the year 1980. Here, once we eradicate the disease, intervention measures are no longer required. Extinction. The term extinction means that the specific infectious agent no longer exists in nature or in the laboratory. So, till to date, no disease has reached this particular stage. Another important aspect that we have to understand when talking about disease control is the importance of the reservoir of infection. So, how do you define the reservoir of infection? Any person, animal, plant, soil, or substance in which an infectious agent normally lives and multiplies. So the reservoir typically harbors the infectious agent without injury to itself and serves as a source from which other individuals can be infected. In other words, the reservoir infection is a constant source of infection to others. The infectious agent primarily depends on the reservoir for its survival. So it is from this reservoir that the infectious substance is transmitted to a human or another susceptible host. So if you look at this diagram, in the center there is disease control, and what we are saying, number one is the controlling of the reservoir, then interruption of disease transmission, and third one is protecting the susceptible host. These are three components of disease control. So now how do you control the reservoir? So usually the reservoir is the weakest link in the disease causation. So most often whenever we want to control the disease, we target the control of reservoir. So elimination of reservoir is much easier. So how do we control the reservoir? There are various measures by which you can control the reservoir. The number one being early diagnosis, notification to the concerned authorities, epidemiological investigation, isolation, treatment and quarantine. Quarantine means restriction of movement of people with the disease so that they do not come in contact with the people who are not diseased. So these are the various measures by which you can control the reservoir. So now let us see how we can do early diagnosis. So we can do early diagnosis by rapid identification of disease, thereby preventing the spread. We can also, by early diagnosis, can study the distribution of disease in terms of time, place and person, and then it is also very important in starting preventive and control measures. Notification of disease is one of the most important component of control of the reservoir, because the moment a notifiable disease is diagnosed, suppose there are many diseases which are nationally notifiable and internationally notifiable, like cholera, plague and yellow fever are internationally notifiable disease, so which has to be notified from the hospital where it is diagnosed to the district health officer. From there the information goes to the state, national and some globally notifiable diseases like cholera, plague and yellow fever are notifiable to the World Health Organization. So this is a very important measure wherein it facilitates early detection and initiation of the immediate public health measures. So some of the diseases, like as I mentioned earlier, the cholera, plague and yellow fever are have to be notified mandatorily under the international health regulation. There are some diseases like low-borne typhus, relapsing fever, paralytic polio, malaria, viral influenza, SARS and smallpox, which are under surveillance. So, just to summarize, what we discussed now is about the various definitions of control, elimination, eradication, extinction, and the importance of the disease control triad, and then how to what are the measures